Do you believe in fate? Because the story you're about to hear is proof that one act of pure courage can change two lives forever. One belonging to a humble mechanic, the other, a powerful billionaire CEO. Listen closely, because this is how it happened. It was a cold, damp morning near Dallas, the air heavy with the smell of rain. David Harper, a 34-year-old single dad, was just another mechanic, tuning an old truck's engine in his small repair shed. His mind was drifting, probably thinking about his daughter, Emma. He tightened a bolt, sighing softly, when the silence suddenly exploded. It was the roar of an engine overhead, but it sounded wrong. It sputtered, it coughed, and then, a deafening boom. David looked up just in time to see a private jet streaking low across the horizon, smoke trailing from one wing. His heart instantly froze. The aircraft tilted, losing altitude rapidly. "No, no, no," he muttered, dropping his wrench. In seconds, the jet hit the nearby lake, skidding and breaking apart in a terrifying splash. He didn't think about the danger. Instinct took over. He just ran, boots slamming against the muddy ground. When he reached the shore, pieces of metal and luggage floated on the water. The cabin was sinking fast. He knew, without a doubt, someone was still inside. He ripped off his jacket and dove into the freezing water. He's swimming through debris and fuel toward the wreckage. But can he reach the person trapped inside before the entire jet disappears beneath the surface? I started running, with only one thought in my head: a person is drowning. How terrifying was the decision to jump into that freezing water. By the time I reached the lakeshore, pieces of metal and luggage floated across the water's surface. The cabin was sinking fast. Without hesitation, I ripped off my jacket and dove in. The shock of the freezing water made me gasp. The metallic taste of fuel mixed with the sting of cold rain, but all I could think was, someone's still inside. As I reached the shattered window, I saw movement. Someone trapped, struggling against the jammed seat belt. Inside the wreck, smoke and water filled the air. A woman's panicked voice echoed faintly. "Help, please!" she screamed, pounding on the glass. I gripped the edge of the frame and shouted, "Hold on!" Taking a deep breath, I pulled my pocket knife from my belt, smashing the weakened glass with all my strength. She gasped for air as water rushed in. "I can't move!" she cried, struggling against the belt around her waist. I reached in, cutting the strap with one clean motion. The plane groaned as another section dipped under the surface. I grabbed her arm and pulled hard, ignoring the pain in my shoulder. "You're going to be okay," I shouted. With one final tug, I freed her from the sinking wreck and pulled her toward the surface, lungs burning. The cold stabbed into my chest like knives, but I didn't stop. When we finally broke through the surface, she coughed violently, gasping for breath. Behind us, the wreck disappeared beneath the lake. I refused to let go. This was no ordinary woman. This was Alexis Monroe, one of the youngest billionaires in the aviation industry. We finally broke through the surface, and she coughed violently, gasping for breath. I kept one arm around her, swimming toward the muddy bank. Every stroke felt heavier than the last, but I refused to let go. We reached the shore, and both of us were shivering uncontrollably in the rain. For a moment, the world felt eerily silent. She clutched her soaked hair away from her face. "You saved my life," she managed between gasps. I shook my head, still catching my breath. "Anyone would have done the same, ma'am," I said quietly, my voice deep but gentle. She looked at me, confused. "Anyone?" she repeated softly. "You jumped into a burning lake." Her voice was cracked with awe. I gave a faint smile, brushing mud from my hands. "You were in trouble," I replied simply. "Didn't think twice." She looked nothing like the people I was used to. No polished suits, just a man who worked with his hands. She wrapped her arms around herself, teeth chattering. "I don't even know your name," she said. "David Harper," I replied. She hesitated. "Alexis Monroe." I nodded politely, not reacting. It was clear I didn't recognize her, or didn't care that she was a young billionaire. To me, she was just a person. "You're freezing," I said. "Come on, I've got a truck nearby." I drove her toward the nearest hospital. When we reached it, nurses rushed out to help. She looked back at me, standing quietly beside my truck, drenched and tired. "You're not coming in?" she asked weakly. "I'll be fine," I replied. "You need care more than I do. At least let me—" she began. "No need," I interrupted gently. "Just glad you're safe." I nodded once and turned back toward my truck. I just walked away. Alexis, the powerful CEO, watched from the hospital window as my old pickup disappeared, leaving only fog. Could she accept that someone risked everything for her without asking for a single thing in return? She was about to find out that this simple mechanic had changed her world forever. I watched his back through the hospital window as he drove away. A simple mechanic walking away without asking for anything in return. That went against every rule of my billion-dollar world. When we reached the hospital, nurses rushed out to help. As they lifted me onto a stretcher, I looked back at him, standing quietly beside his truck, drenched and tired. "You're not coming in?" I asked weakly. "I'll be fine," he replied. "You need care more than I do." Before I could protest, he interrupted gently, "No need. Just glad you're safe." He nodded once and turned back toward his truck. From a hospital window, I watched as his old pickup disappeared down the road, the tail lights fading into the fog. I lay back against the pillow, and tears silently streamed down my cheeks. They weren't from fear, but from something deeper. In my world of contracts, mergers, and billion-dollar meetings, no one did anything without expecting something in return. But that man, that humble mechanic, had risked his life for me without even knowing my name. I closed my eyes, hearing his voice again. Anyone would have done the same. But I knew the truth. Very few would have. The crash had stripped me of everything. My image, my control, my sense of power, but it had also given me something unexpected: perspective. Somewhere out there was a man who reminded me that humanity still existed beneath the noise of wealth and success. The next morning, I asked the nurses if they knew where he lived. They didn't. He hadn't left any information, no address, no contact, just his name. He didn't even ask for payment, one nurse said, incredulous. I exhaled deeply. No, he didn't. In a world where everything had a price tag, David Harper had reminded me that not everything valuable comes with a receipt. I made a silent promise to find him again, because that quiet strength had left a mark I couldn't shake. Finding this man was going to be harder than any merger. I watched him stand there, holding his cap awkwardly. I noticed his bandaged hands, trembling slightly from exhaustion. He had saved my life, and now he was worried about bothering the hospital staff. How could someone who risked so much be so humble? "You hurt yourself," I said, pointing to his hands. "A bit of glass," he admitted. "Nothing serious." His voice was steady but quiet, the kind of voice that carries calm through chaos. Curiosity stirred within me. "What do you do, Mr. Harper?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "I fix things. Mostly engines, cars, planes, anything that runs and breaks." There was pride in his tone, though humble. "My shop's near the airfield. Small place, but it keeps the lights on." I studied him, his weathered hands, his tired eyes. "You work alone?" I asked. "Mostly," he replied. "But I've got a little helper, my daughter, Emma. She's 8. I think she's my boss." That made me smile. "She's a smart kid. Draws pictures of airplanes all day," he said with a hint of warmth. "Says one day she'll build one big enough for both of us to fly away in." He chuckled, though his voice carried a sadness I couldn't quite place. "Her mom's been gone a few years now. It's just the two of us." I stopped him before he could leave. "Wait," I said. "You didn't just save my life. You risked yours." He looked down, embarrassed. "Ma'am, I didn't think about that. I just saw someone in trouble." I told him, "David, you keep saying anyone would have done it. But that's not true." He met my gaze. "Maybe not in your world," he replied gently. "But where I come from, we look out for each other." His words lingered like a quiet truth. He turned to leave, but I spoke again. "David, wait." He looked back. "Yes, ma'am." I smiled faintly. "It's Alexis." "All right, Alexis," he said with a respectful nod, then quietly stepped out of the room. He sat back in his chair outside, exhausted but relieved. He had done his part. But as he rubbed his sore hands, He didn't realize who I truly was until he overheard a nurse whisper, "That's Alexis Monroe. Billionaire runs Monroe Aviation." David blinked in surprise. He hadn't saved a stranger. He'd saved one of the most powerful women in the country. But to him, that didn't matter. He stood, stretching his stiff back, and left quietly before anyone could stop him. He was gone, but Alexis Monroe now knew who he was, and she had a debt to repay. She wasn't searching out of gratitude alone. She was searching because that quiet strength had left a mark she couldn't shake. Will she find him before he vanishes back into his quiet life forever? I had stopped him from leaving, realizing that in a few short minutes, he had taught me a lesson that went against every rule of my boardroom life. He looked down, embarrassed, when I insisted he risked his life. "Ma'am, I didn't think about that. I just saw someone in trouble." His tone was not heroic, just matter-of-fact. I knew in my world, people hesitated to act without assurance, without a reward. Yet this man had jumped into freezing water for a stranger. "David, you keep saying anyone would have done it. But that's not true." He met my gaze. "Maybe not in your world," he replied gently. "But where I come from, we look out for each other." His words lingered in the room like a quiet truth. I lay back, realizing how rare that simple kindness had become in my life. I was beginning to question everything. Maybe losing control wasn't the worst thing. Maybe it was the start of seeing clearly. The next morning, I was ready to leave the hospital, but I needed to find him. I asked the nurses if they knew where he lived. They didn't. He hadn't left any information, no address, no contact, just his name. He didn't even ask for payment, one nurse said, incredulous. I realized the truth. In a world where everything had a price tag, David Harper had reminded me that not everything valuable comes with a receipt. I made a silent promise to find him again. I wasn't searching out of gratitude alone. That afternoon, I left the hospital with one goal: find the man who saved my life and reminded me how to live. But as I drove toward the open road, I wondered, how do you find the most humble man in Texas, especially when he wants to stay hidden? I was back to fixing things. My routine was back, until I heard that sound. It was the sound of engines, smooth, expensive, and completely unfamiliar. A sound that had absolutely no business being in my quiet, forgotten corner of the world. I wiped my hands on a rag, thinking it was just a convoy passing through town. But when I stepped outside, my heart stopped. 3 black Cadillacs rolled slowly down the dirt road, their polished surfaces gleaming against the morning light. They didn't belong here. Emma peeked out from behind me, clutching my arm. "Dad," she whispered, "are they lost?" The cars stopped in front of my modest home, a weathered trailer surrounded by old tools. Then the rear door of the lead Cadillac opened, and Alexis Monroe stepped out. Dressed in a soft gray coat, she looked every bit the elegant CEO I'd seen on television. But her eyes, those same eyes I'd seen in fear, now carried warmth. She smiled gently, as if arriving not for business, but for something deeply personal. "Monroe," I managed, disbelief coloring my voice. "What on earth are you doing here?" She walked closer, heels crunching lightly on gravel. "It's Alexis," she corrected softly. "And I'm here because there's something I didn't say that day." She knelt and smiled at Emma, who was hiding behind me. "You must be Emma," she said. "Your dad told me you're the boss around here." Emma blushed, nodding. I watched silently, my hands nervously tightening around the rag. "You didn't have to come all this way," I said quietly. "I didn't do it for anything in return." Alexis turned to me, her gaze firm yet soft. "I know. That's exactly why I'm here." She motioned to one of her assistants. The assistant opened the Cadillac trunk. Inside was a small box, and beside it, a set of shiny silver keys. Alexis began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "You saved my life. Now I want to give you the chance to rebuild yours." What could a billionaire possibly offer a humble mechanic that would require silver keys and a small box? Was this a giant check, or something that would fundamentally change everything? The box with the keys and documents was in my hand. Alexis looked me dead in the eye and said, "You saved my life. Now, I want to give you the chance to rebuild yours." What is the true, unimaginable value of a single courageous act? I frowned, unsure what she meant. I gently took the box. Inside were official documents, contracts, permits, a deed. Monroe Aviation has just opened a new aircraft repair division, she explained, her voice steady and full of emotion. I want you to run it. Your name will be on the door. I blinked, speechless. I don't understand. I'm just a mechanic. I don't even have a college degree. Alexis stepped closer, meeting my eyes. You're not just a mechanic. You're the man who saved lives without thinking twice. I need people like that leading my company, not just running machines. Emma's eyes widened. She turned the keys slowly in my palm and whispered, Dad, does this mean we'll have our own shop? It looks like it, sweetheart, I said softly, emotions welling up in my chest. This is too much, I murmured. I can't take it. Alexis stepped closer. Yes, you can. Because this isn't charity. It's recognition. I've built empires by trusting talent when I saw it. And right now, I see something I can't ignore. Then, she handed me a smaller envelope. Inside was a photograph, his and Emma's new workshop, freshly built on the edge of the Monroe airfield. The sign above the entrance read, Harper Aviation Repair in partnership with Monroe Industries. I couldn't speak. My knees felt weak. For a man who'd spent his whole life fixing broken things, I'd never imagined someone would fix my future in return. I don't know what to say, I finally whispered. Alexis's expression softened. You don't have to. Just promise me one thing. Keep being the man who jumps in when others hesitate. I smiled faintly, my eyes moist. I think I can manage that. It was no longer just a business deal. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, a warmth neither could ignore. Was this the start of a partnership, or something deeper? I smiled faintly, my eyes moist, clutching the papers. I looked at Alexis and said, I think I can manage that. Then Emma giggled, tugging Alexis's coat. Miss Alexis, can we see it now? The shop. The boss was calling us. We drove together to the airfield that afternoon. The Cadillacs glided across the open road. When we arrived, I stepped out of the truck. The workshop was enormous, brand new, equipped with advanced tools I'd only dreamed of owning. Emma ran ahead, spinning in excitement. Dad, it smells like new paint, she laughed. Alexis watched us, her heart swelling with a feeling she hadn't known in years, peace. For once, success wasn't measured by stock prices or quarterly growth. It was measured by the happiness on a little girl's face. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with gold and crimson, I turned to her. You didn't have to do this, I said again, my voice thick with emotion. I wanted to, she replied softly. You saved more than my life, David. You reminded me how to live. I looked at her, my heart caught somewhere between disbelief and something deeper. You gave me back my life too, I said quietly. I didn't even realize how empty it had become. Alexis smiled faintly. Then maybe we saved each other. We stood there for a while, watching Emma play beneath the setting sun. Night finally fell. Alexis lingered by her car. I should go, she said softly. But this isn't goodbye. David nodded. You'll come back. You couldn't stop me if you tried, she teased gently. As the convoy drove away, Emma tugged at my sleeve. Dad, she said innocently. You like her, don't you? I chuckled softly, my gaze still on the distant taillights. Yes, sweetheart, I admitted quietly. I think I do. And for the first time in a long time, the air felt lighter. Two lives, once divided by worlds, were quietly finding their way toward each other.